What happens when the lines between reality and fiction blur? When historical, mythological, and eldritch beings converge? When a story is so rich that another lies between the lines? The result? A genre-defining story that transcends its medium. Be it in the form of a novel,
Where's the pictures?
manhwa,
Hey, that's me.
or now, an anime. Although many fans have concerns about the anime,
I'm a bit worried.
but we'll get to that in a sec. Regardless, fans are ecstatic, obviously myself included, for this extraordinary story to get animated. This series transformed the way I view manhwa and even fiction as a whole. So today, I cannot wait to delve into Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. But did you know that 100% of viewers aren't subscribed? If you're watching this video, then you're a new viewer, because I've shifted my channel's direction. But to celebrate, I'll make a video on the comment that gets the most likes, I guess? Just don't make it anything weird. We begin at the end. 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse has been releasing chapters for the past 10 years. However, today marked its final chapter. We then encounter Kim Dokja, who has read this novel since the beginning. But for over 3,000 chapters, Dokja was the only reader. Now, Dokja can either be translated as independent person, only child, or reader. So from just this, we can already get a small glimpse at how rich and allegorical this series can be. Because this name is a characterization of Dokja and how he acts in the series. Despite having a troubled past, Dokja has never missed a chapter of this novel. The world of 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse gave Dokja solace, regardless of age. Now, I was gonna make a joke about how that's me for real, but I didn't really want to undermine how relatable this is for humans regardless of location or era. Immersing yourself in another character and world allows you to temporarily forget about who you are and the real world you live in. Like for many, Dokja's life became stagnant, and it was passing him by. When you feel like this, it's incredibly easy to be drawn to stories because they provide an actual sense of progression. However, while most of us are waiting in the station, Dokja is already aboard the train. And with that, the story set into motion. Suddenly, we are met with Dokubis, who orchestrate disasters in the form of scenarios, which is to entertain higher beings, also referred to as Constellations. It's the end of the world. But for Dokja, it's only just starting, because he knows exactly how the story goes. This is the novel that Dokja has spent so many years reading. Naturally, you may think that Dokja's foresight would make any upcoming events feel meaningless. However, I can assure you that is not the case at all. Omniscience does not mean omnipotence. Despite all of Dokja's aforementioned knowledge, he has clear and defined limits. Ultimately, Dokja is not the true protagonist of this world. That title belongs to Yu Jung-kyuk. If you're curious, Jung-kyuk can be interpreted as brilliant amongst the many, which is a very protagonist-esque name. On the other hand, Dokja is just an ordinary human. If only there was a way to overcome this weakness. As far as I'm aware, Dokja is from Korea and not from Sandevistan. Thus, Dokja must use his wit, knowledge and luck to find ways to circumvent his weakness. Finding loopholes and exploits in scenarios like his Meitante Conan solving a case. I mean, Dokja succeeds to the point where they start adding terms and conditions to scenarios. The Constellations are like,
The time has come to take this duel to the next level.
Come on! Again?
but even if Dokja were to be banished to the Shadow Realm, he would just say, just don't make this character reappear, please. I just couldn't handle it when he grabbed his sack. But sacks aside, Dokja is very overpowered, just not in the conventional sense where he's overtly brimming with power from the get-go like other series. And that is where the concern for the anime stems from.
I'm not worried, but I'm definitely going to be cautious going into this anime production, knowing that the beginning is definitely not as good as where the story ends up.
Gigguk is just right. The latter chapters of ORV are much richer, layered, and textured, but that is due to having built upon a solid foundation that the earlier parts established. The beginning of Omniscient Reader is not founded upon cheap tricks, like an abundance of action scenes that are besides the story's core narrative. Rather, you learn about the characters, their raison d'etre, and their traumas, taking these individuals from characters to actual people. This experience is incredibly enthralling, and I've found myself crying multiple times. I especially pray that we get to the 5th disaster arc. It's my favourite. I'm just crying thinking about it. Nonetheless, there are no redundancies in Omniscient Reader. Every character, conversation, and conflict serves a greater purpose. For example, despite the heavy emphasis on the Korean environment and lore, it's still effortless to latch onto and be invested into what happens due to the time taken to craft the characters. Although I can't believe I just used the word lore to describe historical events like the Battle of Hwangsang-biao, but you get the point. Once you're invested, the series reveals its true colours. However, initially it seems you're stuck with a very ordinary looking main character. This perception could not be farther from the truth, in my opinion, as Dokja may be one of the most overpowered characters I've ever seen, given how he actively participates in the progression of the story. And I should emphasize that Dokja remains true to the original story. There are numerous apocalyptic regression series out there, but very few actually explore the rich potential of the original world, opting instead to overwrite it completely with the new MC-centric plotlines. Stories like that render the original world completely moot. Like, what's the point of it being a regression series in the first place? Furthermore, many of these series fall into the trap of telling you what was going to happen as opposed to showing you. So you can never truly fathom the dangers and the stakes at hand, resulting in a gargantuan lack of immersion. Happily, that is not a concern for Omniscient Reader. I just hope the anime conveys how truly OP Dokja can be. Nonetheless, the measure of a character's OPness isn't the only thing that matters. As Dokja is aware, there's always a bigger dog. And the bigger dogs in this world are those higher beings and constellations. These entities are historical, mythological, and fictional figures that have been immortalized through their prominence in human history. Famous examples being Olympian gods such as Persephone, Hermes, and Arachne, progenitors like Archangel Uriel or Vaivasvata Manu, and of course, the Monkey King himself, Son Goku. Amalgamating folklore, history, mythology, and fiction together like this carries huge risks. The characters in our series can quickly become overshadowed by these renowned figures. However, that is not a concern for ORV due to the Star Stream. The Star Stream allows the constellations to observe the scenarios, but it also separates them from it. Should they want to exert their influence on the Star Stream, they gotta pay up.
Mogul moves is at
10,000 biddies.
The currency of bits is equivalent to plausibility. Plausibility is the measure of how likely something is to happen, and should a constellation want to distort the story and change that, they must pay an equivalent amount of plausibility. And should the plausibility required be too great, that will heavily affect said constellation's fable and in turn their existence. This solution permits the interference of these prominent figures, but at a meaningful cost without completely overshadowing the main cast. So while there is a broad spectrum of characters and figures, there is a balance that provides meaningful consequences and a distinct separation between them all, much like the immiscibility of water and oil. Similarly, I initially expected Dokja, a massive introvert, to be immiscible with the new environment. On the contrary, Dokja was more in his element in this world, particularly when he's amongst the characters he has come to love. Emotions like joy, trust, and love can still shine through despite the post-apocalyptic atmosphere. The love Dokja has for these characters is palpable as he nudges them to become who they're supposed to be. Dokja also instills the value of life to Yoo Chung-hyuk. Kim Dokja teaches him that all life is valuable, including his own. Regardless, each side character has their dedicated time to flourish, which is typically very difficult to do with such a diverse cast of characters. However, I shan't delve too deeply into these character arcs now, lest I rob you of that experience. Just know that as you discover these characters, you will come to love them as much as Dokja. That is precisely why I have fallen in love with this series. Not only are the relationships significant, but so is each and every line. There's so much subtext, foreshadowing, and recurrence. There will be numerous times in this series where you'll be like, oh, that's what that meant. There's even small touches like references to Nana Machine, Dragon Ball, and this beautiful quote from Dr. Herlock in One Piece.
When do you think a person dies?
This composition is honestly delightful. But that's not to say that Omniscient Reader is just some plagiarism of a series. As the series itself aptly puts it, forget the stories. What's important is that you find your own story. This profound depth is ubiquitous. Even characters with little presence are meaningful and represent greater ideals. All beings, constellations, and incarnations are on the same path. In the end, everyone is equal in life and death. Well, everyone excluding Kim Dokja, which is a consequence of Dokja's exclusive skill, the Fourth Wall. The Fourth Wall makes Dokja perceive the world he's in as a novel, a work of fiction. Thus, the separation between Dokja and the world is palpable, but simultaneously intangible. For example, there's a running joke that Kim Dokja is ugly. And we can see here that that's clearly not the case. I mean, bro, if this guy's ugly, what chance do we all have? But why do people think he's ugly then? Well, the Fourth Wall is literally blurring Dokja's face for other people. It is actively distorting his perceived appearance to others. Altogether, the Fourth Wall plays a subtle role in this series. While it mostly filters Dokja, first and foremost, the Fourth Wall is a reminder that Dokja is an outsider. Dokja does not truly belong in this world. However, there are still certain traumatic events that infringes upon that rule. Even so, the Fourth Wall feels like its own character, and I truly have to commend the author for achieving this. Well, I should say authors, because both Omniscient Reader and The World After the Fall were written by a married couple, Sing and Zhong. That is certainly something I could not do. I am not married, and my AI-generated girlfriend refuses to write anything. Nonetheless, the relationship between Dokja and the author of this world's novel is symbolic of our relationship to Sing and Zhong. This mysterious figure who has crafted a fascinating world that we've spent countless hours reading over the years. Succinctly, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint illustrates the relationship between the author, the reader, and what connects them, the story. Dokja is living in the story written by the author, and the author is loving Dokja's experiences in said world. But despite the world being so beautiful and captivating, it was teetering on the edge of death. Even the most beautiful stories can die if there are no readers. The author's story can only go so far by itself, and only until it reaches the palm of the readers can it thrive. Therefore, I personally think that this story and message is both the fictional and real author's way of saying, thank you for reading our story. And I'll reciprocate the same by saying, thank you for watching this video, and thank you for keeping our stories alive. Again, thank you for watching, remember to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.